If The Legend of Korra is infamous for anything, it's destroying the past lives. Before we get into this, I want to clarify one thing. Korra was not responsible for destroying the past lives. Unavatu tore Rava from Korra and proceeded to strike Rava until the past lives were gone. From an out-of-universe perspective, this was something the powers that be pulled. With that said, where do I begin with how bad the writing decision was for this? Let's put aside my distaste for having yin and yang be reduced to light is good, dark is evil, and defining balance as the Star Wars method of light must overcome dark. Let's also ignore that Unalaq is the worst major antagonist of the franchise by far and does not deserve the honor of destroying the past lives. Yes, I even find Hoondoon more compelling. The same Hoondoon that nobody has heard of unless you are a die-hard Avatar fan. My problem is that the destruction of the past lives is not exactly filled by the most compelling substitute. You see, a running theme of Avatar is that the mistakes of the past lives will ultimately find their way into being the problem with the next Avatar, or avatars long after that. These are fallible human characters with a divine role to play. The issue of Korra solely having the relationship with Rava is that Rava is just a duller substitute in comparison. So you have a relationship with an immortal flower made out of light whose dominion is peace. Please tell me how this is more interesting than the past lives. It's not even some person having two natures that can be in conflict with one another. This is just two different characters in one, and one of them stays silent most of the time. One of them is a flat character in terms of personality and stature. It's frustrating because the Flash game Escape from the Spirit World tackles the idea of whether or not the Avatar should be like Rava, an immortal spirit of nearly limitless power. And it's an idea that Yang Chen absolutely refutes, saying that it's your duty to the world, and thus experiencing things like pain, and plenty of it, as well as its joys. And the happiness make the Avatar, giving the Avatar a sense of humanity, since the Avatar is a being that has a duty to the world, and thus humans are part of that world. And honestly, I think this idea of the Avatar works much better with The Legend of Korra on a thematic level, because one of the constant questions is whether or not there should even be an Avatar at all. Putting aside that Kyoshi found Vidali, something that Aang absolutely dislikes, The Legend of Korra asks many questions about the role of the Avatar. With the theme of benders versus non-benders, one of the questions posed during the first season was whether Korra can be an avatar for the non-bending population while she herself is a bender. One woman even spells it out, saying that you're our avatar too. Within the Water Tribe Civil War in the second season, the question is asked whether the Avatar can simply solve a political divide between North and South, questions that arose far before the Avatar was even born, and whether or not being neutral as the Avatar is just condoning the oppression. The third season asked whether the Avatar should even exist at all, since balance essentially means keeping the peace as the status quo, no matter the cost of how awful that status quo might be. And the fourth season was what happens when there isn't an avatar and who fills that avatar-like role. It's a bit of a noticeable problem when the avatar stops being a collection of fallible humans and their wisdom and experiences and skills, and simply becomes a fusion of what amounts to the god of light and peace and a human. It de-emphasizes the humanity of the avatar in favor of highlighting the divinity. When the story so desperately wants to highlight the humanity, I don't think the divinity part exactly helps unless you want to make Rava akin to a Greek or Norse god. Meanwhile, with humanity, you have, I was a bureaucrat focused solely on the Fire Nation and screwed every other nation over. I did well with humans, but screwed over everyone else, like the spirits, since I'm their avatar too. I fought a ton of spirits, but neglected the physical world, and brought about my early death. My ineptitude with politics created an authoritarian police state detached from the world. I couldn't go up against a friend, and the world plunged into war because of it. I am the sole survivor of a genocide and have to rebuild my culture from the ground up and ensure that airbending doesn't die with me, also post-war shenanigans because the world can't control itself. For a series that wanted to humanize the Avatar as a concept, it managed to neglect the humanity of the Avatar by throwing out the human element in favor of solely divine. I also take issue with the idea that Rava is essentially the driving force behind the Avatar and the Avatar state. While I do understand the idea of the Avatar being a human fused with a spirit, I take issue with the idea that it's not the past Avatars that have a direct connection to Korra. It's Rava who has a direct connection to Korra, and Rava is the hard drive for all the other avatars. That's just not interesting and just plain cheapens their role. It's not that Korra's connected to them, their experiences, their skills, their power. It's Korra's connected to Rava, who just stores all of that. We went from having the past lives collectively being the avatar to they were just bits of data stored by the true power source behind the avatar. Like I said last time, Avatar The Last Airbender emphasized that the avatar is truly divine and truly human. The Legend of Korra flip-flops between whether the avatar is truly divine and truly human, and which side is more dominant at once. Those are just my thoughts. Before at least I get into a Christological heresy, please consider liking, subscribing, tipping the channel on Ko-fi. This is Cyril signing off.